long time ago, I was a very frustrated young man. I was having a very difficult time in my own mind resolving questions of faith versus science versus what I saw versus what I was being told. It was very difficult for me. I don't want to rehash my entire life story. That's not the purpose of this particular episode. But you need to understand that for me, it became a matter of simply accepting something that I could not resolve in my own head, much like Johannes Kepler. Johannes Kepler believed that the orbits of the planets were defined by the five perfect solids, and he couldn't get it to work. And the reason he couldn't get it to work is because, well, it doesn't work. But he was convinced that it did, but he couldn't resolve it, and he spent his entire life trying to resolve those two things. Never could succeed because, well, it was wrong. For my own part, there came a moment where I had picked up a book and I was reading this book because it intrigued me. It was about science and faith. And the name of the book was Genesis and the Big Bang by Gerald Schrader. Not that that matters at this point, but he had in there a description of something that I was familiar with. What was that something? Well, it was simply an equation, E equals mc squared. Now, E equals mc squared, of course, is the foundational equation of Einstein's theory of special relativity. Now, special relativity is not general relativity, and this is not a science class, so I'm not going to sit here and explain the difference to you, but if you're familiar at all with the equation E equals mc squared, you probably understand that what it's primarily understood to mean is a conversion of matter to energy, which we have thus applied to weapons, specifically atomic weapons, which throughout the last 100 years or so has been the primary use of this theory of the equation, that is, from E equals mc squared. The problem is that the theory itself, special relativity, especially as applied to general relativity, and within the context of the equation E equals mc squared, while it unlocked the secrets of the bomb, it actually is so much more than that. The simplest explanation I could find online, and this is what Einstein said, everything should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler. The simplest application of E equals mc squared that I could find was this particular photo. If you're looking at the video, if you're not, not sure how I'm going to explain this, except that time and space are two of three axes that we observe the universe through. And light comes from the past light cone. It shrinks down to where we are now, to our observation point, and then it expands out into the future light point, as you can see on the video there. Again, not going to try to explain it to you because A, I'm not a scientist, and B, I'm not sure I could in the space of just a few moments of discussion here. But what you need to understand is that while I understood in principle E equals mc squared, what I didn't understand was the implication. What does it mean? Oh, sure, it has some meanings, and we'll get into some of those later, but what about what about more than that? What is the application? How does this change my life? What does this moment for me do? And in a simple explanation of things, because it should be simple as possible, but no simpler, a sentence in that book pulled back the curtain for me. And all of a sudden, E equals mc squared was not about bombs. It wasn't about nuclear weapons and power and those sorts of things. there was a greater implication to the entire theory, which was underpinned by this simple equation that changed my life. I mean, it really did. I know that sounds like a stupid thing to say, Dave, you're not a scientist. I know, I get it. I'm a historian. I like to think of myself as something of a philosopher. I'm not, but I like to think of myself in those terms. I am a historian. That's what I do. And as someone who had struggled with so much of my faith versus what I observed, all of a sudden, this simple idea of Einstein's special theory of relativity folded into general relativity, underpinned by E equals mc squared, changed my life. And how did it do so? With this simple sentence: time is relative to the observer. Now, I know what you're saying. You're going, well, okay, what does that mean, Dave? What it essentially means is that time slows down. I can explain it to you, but the long story short is that from the moment of creation, whatever you believe that to have been is irrelevant to me. But from the moment of creation, from our observation, time is slowing down. It has to, because the speed of light is constant and the universe is expanding. Therefore, our perception of it is that we've seen this in Planet of the Apes and other movies and scientific things. I know it doesn't seem like it because I'm getting closer to my older age, and sometimes it doesn't seem like time is slowing down for me, but it is. All of this came to a discussion point on June 28th. Now, for those of you who don't know this, if you listen to this show, I don't know how you wouldn't know it, but maybe you're new. Every Tuesday morning at 5 in the freaking morning Pacific time, which is where I am, in the Pacific time zone, I am on the air with Bill Mick, who is in the Eastern time zone. It's 8 o'clock his time, 5 o'clock in the morning my time. And we do a little bit called Dave. We do an hour called Dave Does History. And it's just a kind of an entertaining history lesson for his audience, just to kind of talk about some historical things. And we did an episode on June 28th called The Pursuit of Happiness. We were talking about the idea that originally the Declaration of Independence had said life, liberty, and property, and that had been intentionally and knowingly changed to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we were talking about, well, why that changed, what came about. It came about because, in my mind, this episode came about because of an article I had read on the Journal of the American Revolution, which led to me buying the book, which led to me just doing a lot of reading about things. And in essence, what it came down to was this idea that the pursuit of happiness is something different. Now, when I was doing this show, I thought I had a good intellectual understanding of it. I thought I had a handle on it, and I was talking on Bill's show, and I can listen to it. I can hear it when I'm listening to it. Nobody else may pick it up. I don't know. If you go back and listen to it and you think you hear the moment, drop me an email, dave@thedavebowmanshow.com, and let me know if you hear it, because I can hear it as clear as day. There comes a moment on that program when I'm talking, just like I'm talking now, and it's like the light bulb goes on. And in my head, suddenly, just like that sentence all those years ago in Einstein's E equals mc squared, all of a sudden I had a completely different understanding of the meaning of the phrase, the pursuit of happiness. I had a different understanding in the sense that I understood how it came to be and what it meant philosophically and blah, blah, blah. But all of a sudden for me, boom, it was like the curtain had drawn back. And I didn't have time at that point, because I'll give you hints in the last segment, to expand on that. But my head was going, wait, let's go this way. And my body was saying, I can't, I'm on the air. I got to do this before I can do that. And I will tell you that I have spent the better part of time since June 28th talking about or thinking about this very subject, this idea of what changed, what happened to me at that moment, what happened, what did I see that was different all of a sudden? We found philosophy, Western philosophy in particular, on Rene Descartes' maxim, I think, therefore I am. I exist because I think, and because I think, I exist, and therefore I am. In many ways, and this is what ended up happening to me, I got into a discussion in a Torah discussion class about the question in the class was, which is better, Torah or mitzvot? And before you jump on the answer and send me an email, there's a subtlety to this argument that I don't have time to get into. But there was a comparison to the mitzvot, the rules, the laws, the 613 mitzvot that Jews follow, to being much like Descartes' thought process. They are very cold, they're very absolute, they're very intellectual. 2 + 2 = 4, and you don't really go outside of that. It's very, very absolute. As my rabbi said, when you're solving an equation, 2 + 2 = 4, E = mc², you don't use your emotions to solve that equation. You don't choose the answer to that equation based on what you want it to be, what you feel it should be. You choose that based on the realities, and it's very cold and very logical and very, Spock-like. It's very Spockish. It's very logical. Infinite diversity and infinite combinations, logic kind of thing. The problem is that, of course, we're human beings, and we need that emotional side of things. And so while the mitzvot themselves are very precise and very accurate and very do this, don't do that, Torah study gets us into more of the emotional side of things. It opens up our minds to the ideas of emotional understanding of things. And again, I don't want to get distracted with Star Trek, but I think the entire overarching story of Star Trek is not about Captain Kirk. It's about Spock. It's about this idea that you live your life by a certain principle, a certain thing that you're not really qualified to be. And remember, he's only half Vulcan. And it's a discovery of the emotional side of things that leads you to accept that you are who you are. And consequently, you can smile about it. But the pursuit of happiness phrase, the concept, the philosophy, has a deeper meaning to it. We read it and we go, well, the pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, what does that mean? What is the pursuit of happiness? Is it simply saying, well, I want lots of money, or I want lots of women, or I want lots of companionship, or I want lots of stuff? What is it? Is it all of that, or is it none of that, or is it some of that combined with other things? What is it? Well, as it turns out, it's a philosophy. It's a philosophy that was given to young America in the 1700s by a man named Dr. Reverend Samuel Johnson, the American one, not the English one who wrote the dictionary. Samuel Johnson wanted an idea that was a philosophy that was apart from Descartes. Descartes is very European, I know he's French, but his philosophy is very English. I think, therefore I am. You are set in a stone in a place. And most English education was built around the idea of educating you to stay in your lane, be in your class, behave as your class would have you to behave. It was never about improving oneself. There's very little thought, philosophically or otherwise, in English education, particularly in the 18th, 19th centuries, about becoming more. And Dr. Reverend Samuel Johnson began to contemplate all this, and I don't have time to go through the whole thing, but in revising all of American education in the 1700s and teaching his son, in teaching more than 100 founding fathers his philosophy, or having it taught by his subsequent teachers, he hit upon this idea. I perceive and I act. Therefore, I am. Now, we could get lost in words and we could get lost in meanings, but to perceive is to become aware or conscious of something, come to realize or understand. I perceived that E equals mc squared has a much more personal meaning to it than simply an atomic bomb. In Johnson's idea, Americans were more about seeing what was going on around them, to understand it, to realize it, and they acted accordingly. They sought to change their situation. They changed what they were doing. Therefore, I am. Therefore, I have sought out a new way of doing things. And for all practical purposes, an American way of doing things, because it was totally separate from the English way of doing things. Do you understand what I'm saying here? I realize it's complex, and I realize I'm talking fast, and I realize I'm very excited about this idea. I have spent a week and a half thinking about this idea, sitting here thinking about it, talking with fellow members of my synagogue about it, with friends about it. And it's almost bursting out of me. And I'm not sure I'm even making sense, to be honest with you. But for me, it's like the curtain is pulled back and I see the universe. I see the meaning of the Declaration of Independence in an entirely new way, in an entirely new universe, as it were. The pursuit of happiness is more than just everybody, as the scripture says, doing what makes them happy. If that were the case, if the pursuit of happiness simply meant, doing your own thing, then the 60s mantra would be true, wouldn't it? It would be the rule. But like the difference between the words and the similarities between the words liberty and freedom, there's a deeper implication of union in what it is that we're perceiving and acting upon. What is that? Empathy, love for my fellow Americans, for my fellow human beings. Empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is the ability to put myself in their shoes, to see things from their point of view. And if we could see things from their point of view, from other people's point of view, and likewise they see things from our point of view, what would our pursuit of happiness look like today in 2022 America? Look, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a physicist. I kind of wish I was, but I'm not. But E equals mc squared came with certain implications, certain meanings, as it were. The first of those meanings is that mass, all mass, has an inherent energy in it. You might not see it, might be at rest, but all mass has energy. Mass can be converted into pure energy. This is the principle behind, of course, an atomic weapon. We take a few pounds of radioactive material, uranium, plutonium, whatever, and by manipulating it, crushing it, putting it together, we convert it into pure energy and we knock stuff down. But the most important part of this, and the part we almost never talk about, is that energy can then be used to make mass. Energy doesn't, to us, seem like anything physical, but it is what is used to make mass. This is the whole idea behind the Hadron Colliders, the Large Hadron Colliders. This is the whole idea behind the expanding of the universe. Energy is pushed together at such high volumes that it produces more mass. I know it's mind-boggling, as they say. And you go, wait, Dave, that can't happen. You can't make something out of nothing. And yet the laws of physics and the implication of the meaning of E equals mc squared is that you can do that. Whoa. This, like I said, opens my eyes to a new way of looking, not just at the universe, but at creation itself and my place personally in that creation. I've said hundreds of times, those of you who've been around the show for a long time know this, I don't need faith to tell me that God created. I need faith to tell me that in 15.5 billion years of creation, in a universe that is so mind-bogglingly large, that it's impossible for me to even conceive of the other side of it, that I matter in any way, shape, or form. If this all happened randomly, then what do I owe to my fellow creation? If it's just pure randomness, what is that to me then? If I'm just here because, the die were cast and my number came up, what do I owe anything or anyone? But if this was directed, what then is its purpose? What then am I supposed to be doing? What then does it all mean? He said, somewhat oddly, realizing that I just forgot to put in the slides, so I'll have to put them in after the fact. The pursuit of happiness literally means this. Even at rest, the potential is inherent in every man to find happiness, to pursue happiness. Every person, every living soul has that potential. Secondly, every man, every being, every human can convert into pure happiness, can pursue and convert into pure happiness, energy. But most of all, and most importantly, every human being can create more happiness. This is what sets us apart as Americans. This is what changes who we are. We believe that these are unalienable rights. Life, liberty, and that pursuit of happiness, that understanding that we perceive what is going on around us and we act upon that to change our lives and our existence and our country. We believe that that is unalienable. And Randy, if you're listening, I finally realized what you were saying this morning. It's an inside joke. Sorry. I get it. If we believe that this is true, if we truly and honestly believe that the pursuit of happiness is an unalienable right given to us by creation, whatever you believe that creation to have been, how does that change our lives? When we understand that the pursuit of happiness is not the pursuit of stuff, it's not the pursuit of money, it's not the pursuit of people, it's so much more. It's a responsibility to empathize with our fellow human beings, our fellow Americans, and to improve not just our lives, but to act to improve all lives, all people, anywhere we can find them. If we truly believe that that is an unalienable right, how does it change who we are and how we see not just the Declaration of Independence, but America? It asks the question, can we find empathy in ourselves for our fellow Americans, even Americans with whom we disagree about anything? Can we expend our energy to create more energy? Can we expend our pursuit of happiness to expand the pursuit of happiness? And if we can, then not only will we pursue happiness, we will find out, as Einstein said, that it is a constantly expanding, never-ending creation, which will constantly grow and encompass more and more of our lives as we finally understand what it means to pursue happiness.